So let's get started with updates. And the first person I'm going to call on is Elise Hoblitzel, please, to give us an update on the Contemplative Practices Affinity Group. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Anne. So great to be here and so great to see so many familiar and wonderful faces. I just love the gallery. So next Sunday, the 22nd at 5 o'clock, the Contemplative Practices Affinity Group will be hosting Chris Beishy, who will speak to us about his remarkable book, LSD and the Mind of the Universe. So if you haven't read the book, hurry up. He also shared 3 podcasts about interviewing with folks interviewing him about the book. And I can, if anyone's interested in seeing those, I can resend those through the Affinity group that he shared with us a while back. So I'm going to pop my email into the chat momentarily. If people need to reach out, if some of you here aren't yet part of that Affinity group and would like to join us next Sunday, I'd be delighted to add you to the group. You just need to send me an email and then I'll add your email to that Google group. It is a Google group, so you need to have some kind of, it doesn't have to be a Gmail address, but you need to have some kind of Gmail, I don't know, account, I think. I'm not quite sure how these things work, but, and the other.
Oh, do you know what time that will be on Sunday?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ron. It's at 5 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay.
Eastern time, 5 to 6:30. And the other announcement that I have is that we're going to hit the pause button on our group just for the summer, and then we'll be back in full force in the fall. So I encourage those of you who have contemplative practices to enjoy your quiet contemplative practice in the summer, and then we'll be back together in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elise. So, Andrew Essington, can you please give us an update on the CAP Affinity Group?
Love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm a nurse in Boston at Tufts Medical Center, and I also work outpatient in an integrative psychiatry practice in Medford. And I am one of the people running the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy affinity group. So we have our 3rd meeting coming up. This was a group that was originally active around 2019, and we've since kind of restarted it given the growing interest in ketamine. And we had some interesting meetings and some great talks, and our primary focus is, well, I want to have sort of like a big tent. So anyone from experienced to providers to potential patients who are curious about the experience to just anyone who's interested in the benefits of ketamine specifically for treatment-resistant depression. Well, it's not one of the classical psychedelics. There's a lot of exciting research, some of which is like being done in Boston, about the benefits of not just ketamine infusions, but using it to facilitate either psycholytic or deep psychedelic mystical experiences. And sort of on the heels of the excellent talk by Raquel Bennett at the last BPRG meeting. In our last meeting, we were sort of talking about dosing strategies and provider experiences. And then we had 2 really excellent perspectives from people who've been receiving ketamine-assisted therapy and the impact it's had on their lives. So our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, June 22nd. And I will I put my information in the chat box. It's going to be at 7 p.m. And the way we run the meetings is kind of to do some general introductions and a little networking, and then choosing a topic ahead of time to just give the meetings a general framework, but really welcome anyone who's interested, anyone who can bring some clinical experience to the meeting, or anyone who's interested in starting or being involved in ketamine-assisted therapy in any way. So thank you. I will put my name in the chat box, and I think that's it. Thank you, Anne.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew, especially since you worked the night shift last night.
Going right back to bed.
Thank you. Next, Rebecca Slater, please, to tell us about the affinity group she's heading up, which is Vets and Psychedelics.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Slater. Have a bit of a, what I'm referring to as sort of a seedling organization, affinity group. We started earlier this year with the goal to support and energize veterans around the topic of psychedelic assisted therapy. The main focus for the first kind of half of the year has just been on building up a group membership. We've had a few people associated with veterans causes get involved. And then also just really looking at resources that we can build upon. So focusing around education, access, and connections. We're looking to share information on the different studies going on, the different ways veterans can connect with each other in a safe way on the topic, and then how to connect veterans with each other. We've done some, we're doing some collaboration with the Heroics Heart Project on resource, pulling together resources that are veteran focused, that include psychedelics as a component, but not the full component. In addition to this group, I serve as an ambassador for Heroic Hearts. So I'm pulling on some of those leads to integrate some resources. We are excited to be partnering with University of Texas Dell Medical School with one of the first veteran, with a veteran focus with a nonprofit group on psychedelic healing with the veteran population. And then finally, just wanted to share some stories. I'll put them in the chat, but really the part of this is also sharing success stories, sharing veterans who've come through. And so I'll put a couple links in the chat for you to take a look at your own time. But one is on a gentleman, he's actually in Cambridge, not Harvard, but his quote was, I lost more troops to suicide once they got out of the military than I ever did in actual combat. There's, I think the stat is something like 22 suicides a day due to veterans taking their own lives. So there's a lot of hope around this as a topic, and our goal is to just as access becomes available, educate and be trusted resources in that journey. So if you are interested in participating, I think we're going to get a meeting on the books in early June. And I'll put my link in the chat. You can reach out, and please would love to have her, specifically looking for people who are veterans or serve them in their practice regularly, who could be an ally to share resources. That's all I have. I'll put that information in the chat.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Great work. Next, Jim Miller, please, to tell us about the new affinity group, the strategic planning for the future of the BPRG.
Future of the BPRG is a little bit of a heavy lift at this point. I'd like to. At this point, we are a listening group and not a talking group. We just really want to hear what it is that would be useful for members. And we've received suggestions that BPRG might assist in some way in ketamine training for clinicians at one end of the complex spectrum, to practical things like people starting practices and don't really understand how one starts with an insurance, and should I sign a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, so sort of legal type stuff, particularly for new clinicians. And so there's simply no reason for each new clinician to reinvent the wheel each time one of them starts the practice, right? I mean, these are sort of not, they're sort of cognizable issues, insurance, dealing with the registration boards, you know, investment things. I mean, in terms of should I buy something or not. So anyway, so we are really just trying to assemble as many suggestions / requirements or interest as possible, and then sort of titrate them into BPRG's larger goal, which is of course education, but without diminishing that at all, and trying to be more helpful. So I guess at this point, if people have other ideas that would be helpful to them, I'd love to hear about them. And we will be sort of engaging and hopefully in the fall begin to sort of execute on some of these ideas that people have offered us.
Thank you so much, Jim. I said the BPRG is kind of an adolescent right now, and we need some help growing up. So thanks for being our parent. Great. And then I'd like to invite Jonathan Burgess from Vermont. I'm not sure you've been with us before, Jonathan, so welcome. And we're curious here in Boston to hear what you're doing up in Vermont with your group.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, the group was founded predominantly by Rick Barnett, and
Yeah. Can
there's
you give us the
Hello?
name first? I'm sorry, I forgot to say the name, but the Psychedelic Society of Vermont, right?
Yeah, the Psychedelic Society of Vermont, otherwise known as So Vermont, which so it's predominantly founded by Rick Barnett. He wasn't able to make it tonight. He is a psychologist and psychotherapist who specializes in addiction. I am also one of the inaugural / founding members. I'm a psychiatry resident at the University of Vermont, third year, almost fourth year. And the group is, basically it's healthcare professionals only. And discussing what our relationship will be to these compounds in our patients, how to help legislation along, how we can support each other as these compounds become FDA approved, thinking about ways that we could potentially become an expanded access resource and site for MDMA trials or psilocybin trials. There's several people in the group that are active ketamine providers. And so there's some referrals there. And then there's a large aspect of the group that, is just kind of, well, they're interested in all things, but my own personal interest, I didn't really introduce myself. I'm a third year psychiatry resident. My longstanding passion has been diet and lifestyle interventions for psychiatric disorders. I've written 3 book chapters on that topic. I'm about to write a 4th in various academic textbooks, but then the evidence for psychedelics came along and it's just too good to ignore. And so my own personal practice eventually will be psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, as well as using that as a springboard to eventually enact longstanding lifestyle changes with healthy lifestyle habits. The big thing that we need to talk about is the Psychedelic Society of Vermont conference, which is coming up. That's going to be June 20th and 21st. I will put that in the chat. We have like titans of the field coming. It's kind of impressive. And it's going to be relatively intimate. So the maximum that we could potentially have, send to all. Click. The maximum participants that we could potentially have is 120. And so it's going to be all of those superstar researchers and a small group of us. And we're going to be at Trapp Family Lodge, which is just a lovely location. So the Vermont Psychedelic Society, the conference is published on the very first page of the website. Here's Dr. Barnett's contact information. Here's my contact information if you're also interested in connecting with me. Oh, and I'm going on at length, but I forgot to say one thing. I also do public talks on psychedelics. So at this point, I've given my talk, psychedelics in the management of depression. I've given that as 2 grand rounds. One was at White River Junction, VA. And the other one was at University of Vermont, and I've given it to the Psychedelic Society of Vermont twice. It's usually very well received, pretty dynamic. Almost 100 participants every time we put it on. So I'm available for that talk if anyone's interested.
Great. Thank you so much. It's great
Sure
to
thing.
hear more and more of these groups all over the place. We all should be working together. So thank you for that update. And good luck with your conference. It sounds great. Next up, Alex Cardenas, please, to give us an update on APA, the American Psychedelic Practitioners Association.
Hey everyone, really nice to be here. I just put our website and our email address in the chat, and I'll put give me a second while I put one more. I'm going to put a PDF here to share. So yeah, my name is Alex Cardenas. I'm one of the co-executive directors of the American Psychedelic Practitioners Association. I see a lot of new faces today, so I'll just say a brief history of how we came to be. About 2.5 years ago, a group on the East Coast and a group on the West Coast kind of came together with the idea that, hey, a professional association really needed to exist. And so folks like Jeremy Daniels at BPRG, as well as Jim Hopper, from BPRG, were coming together. Leah Mix had put together a group of us also on the West Coast. We joined forces. We called ourselves the Medicine Midwives because we knew that this needed to exist, but it wasn't our baby. And we were very mindful to not want to assume power and saying, hey, we're the ones to do this. So what we went about was forming a steering committee, kind of like a Continental Congress, to form the rules of an election for an organization that didn't exist yet. And we also formed an interim leadership team to kind of build the bones of the association. That election was held back in December, and we announced our founding board in January. And the name was chosen after a long number of debates. So where we are at now, and just the function of APA is to, one, be a professional association to help legitimize the field, bring our community members together to help have a unified voice, both for policy agendas as well as building the standards of care and standards of training that this field needs to so that we can be successful in helping psychedelic assisted therapies be adopted into the healthcare system, both on a national and state as well as county level. So that's what we're up to. So some of the major updates: we have successfully raised seed funding to the point where we have our website 2.0 will be up in a week on the 21st, where you can see the bios of our board members and see our working groups that are available to apply for. We anticipate having our membership portal be open in about a month, give or take. We're working on the back end of that right now. We have several active working groups. We have a JEDI group that's full at the moment. We have an ethics group that's also full, and they're building consensus around all the different ethical guidelines that have been put out there. And we are building an accountability working group. So we work hand in hand with the Board of Psychedelic Medicine and Therapies. That's the certification board on the national level. They, of course, will do what most certification boards do of investigating wrongdoing and deciding if people can keep their certificate. But for the folks that whose violations weren't necessarily egregious but intervenable, we are developing accountability processes for those individuals. We will likely offer those services or recommend a third party, which is often how it happens, not only to just our members, but to the community at large, because not everyone will be practicing in the medicalized space, but still could use the support of, accountability support, both for the clients as well as for practitioners. So yeah, you can reach out to that email address if you're interested in joining that working group that's being built out now. And then our major policy accomplishments in terms of standards of care and standards of training are working groups that are also congealing at the moment. And that will include stakeholder groups from some of the major organizations in the training space, as well as in the standard space, as well as balanced with practitioner working groups for folks that don't have those conflicts of interest and and that allows us to bring in a wider variety of methodologies and lineages to help ensure that the medical model is an awesome model. I mean, I'm motivated to be doing this, not just to get things medicalized per se and get them covered, because health insurance coverage is all about getting people access to these treatments. But I'm motivated to make sure that the medical model is something that I would want for myself or my loved ones. And so, having as many different methodologies and lineages and wisdom traditions have input into that process is important to us. So I will put in the chat a link to our upcoming town halls. We have 3 town halls coming up. There we go. Let's see if this works. There we go. So you can see them there. One town hall is for training programs, because if you can imagine, there's 50+ training programs right now throughout the country. We obviously can't have a 50-person committee to build consensus around training standards. So we want to bring as many people to the table as we can and have a mechanism to keep people informed, and to get their feedback throughout the process. So we have one for training programs. We have one for practitioners. That one's going to be more geared towards letting people know what we're up to, as well as starting to get feedback, because we're building out our membership services. And we want to hear what people's priorities are, both for membership, like things we can offer, membership, mentorship, professional development, support, as well as our policy priorities beyond what we have to do right now, which is working on the standards of care. And then the other one is a roadmap, helping policy-minded folks understand the roadmap to going from building these standards to getting these treatments adopted into the healthcare system. And that is a several-year process, but I think it's helpful for people to see the big picture, ultimately because that big picture requires us to be highly coordinated as a community. Everyone's doing really important work. Every regional society, every research group, every clinic plays a role in helping this become above board. And if we act in a coordinated fashion, we can be successful in a much faster way to get these treatments adopted. And again, the adoption is really based on estimates of 5 to 10 million Americans qualifying for these treatments a year through the insurance industry. And there's simply not enough philanthropy in the world to pay for people's treatments if we don't succeed in getting insurance coverage. So the last thing I'll say is also, because we've been successful in fundraising, we are going to be announcing several jobs openings. So we are looking for a COO, someone who perhaps has more startup experience, given that that's the stage we're at. We'll also be hiring 3 project managers, one for community and education, one for policy and advocacy, one for state initiatives. So we are trying to help the Oregon effort. I live in Oregon, trying to help guide that, or at least inform them of things happening on the national level that they may want to adopt, as well as looking for administrative assistance. So those job postings, the working groups that I mentioned, will all be on our website in a week from now. The website right now you'll see is something that we made on Wix, or something like Wix, but we have something a little fancier coming up. So I figured I'd give everyone the heads up in case people are interested in any of those positions or any of those working groups. That's what we're up to, and we're going to go into a lot more detail in these town halls. So please register. Thank you so much.
Great, Alex. Thank you. Your midwives have done a really good job. The baby's being born. Congratulations. It's exciting. Great. Is Bob Kaufman on? He had hoped to be on to give us an update on the board, the credentialing board, but I don't think he's on. We'll get an update from him that we can put in the email, because I know they're doing a lot of important work right now, and he had hoped to be with us, but something's come up. So how about Elizabeth Ames to tell us what's going on with her project in Ukraine, please?
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you for everyone for inviting me to be here. The last couple of months, I've been working to start up Heal Ukraine Trauma, which is a US-based nonprofit focused on post-conflict trauma mitigation in Ukraine. So we focus on Ukrainian projects with meaningful social impact, potential to scale broadly, and innovation in the trauma treatment world. Practically, what that's translating to is non-medicine digital projects, which will give us scale, and also creating a legalization pathway and infrastructure for helping military veterans with MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD, which is the innovation side. And we think that the project implementation on that broadly will line up with the timing of FDA approval here. So that works nicely. We launched this past week. We had our first board meeting, and thanks to the board members I see here on this call. And that's what we're doing. We believe it's our obligation to continue to fight the war after the war, so that we don't see another 2 generations of Ukrainians lose heart and soul from the conflict.
Great. So it's inspirational, Elizabeth. Thank you. And I think also to note for people who are new that this idea really grew out with Elizabeth's lead of the BPRG, and she with colleagues in the Ukraine formed the UPRA, so the Ukrainian Psychedelic Research Association. So it's really amazing to watch how this is all spreading, and the work you're doing is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.